good afternoon, everybody. It's now May, and I've just been telling our guest speaker this afternoon. That's very loud. Can you all hear me at the back? I've only got 7 of these to go. Not that I'm counting. But now that it's May, it means there's only June left. So, welcome everyone this afternoon. And if I could remind you about your cell phones, please. So turn them either off or turn them down. And I'm going to just acknowledge our guest speaker this afternoon, Ian McKinnon, who he and I have a long and convoluted history together, which Ian won't be commenting on today, but he will be more formally introduced by Roger a little later. Now, I notice that I have no one down to give grace, except for John Preble standing at the back. So would you like to lead us in grace, please, John?
I'm afraid it is exceptional, but bless this food to our use and us to our service, for the Lord's sake. Amen.
Thank you, John. Now we have some other guests today that I'd like to acknowledge. So we have a Rotarian from Wellington North, David Barnes. Where are you, David? Hi. Very welcome. Thank you very much for coming along today. Thank you. And Jen, would you like to reintroduce your guest, please?
My guest today is my partner, Ben Vanderkamp, who continues to come as my guest, but you'll all be very pleased that sooner or later he's going to put the dedication of the memberships.
Not if you keep paying for them, he won't. Jen, you've got to sort this out. Now, do we have any world travellers about to go away? Brian, thank you. Okay, that's all. Thank you. You just better be aware that the Jazz Festival's coming up, so if you need to go overseas, you've got to get it done in a very short time frame before I'm expecting you to buy jazz tickets. World travellers returning. Are there any of you that have been overseas? No? Okay. Birthdays. Reece Barlow's just had a birthday. And I've warned him he's putting $50 in. That's very generous. And also James Austin, who's not here. Yes, he is, James. Now, I did get you last time, didn't I? So James turned 65, so now we're all paying for James. So, and he also's got a new job, which he's put about. So, congratulations. Now we'd like to invite Brian Hasell to come up and lead us in the Sergeant session, please.
Thank you, Preston Terry. You might have noticed that we didn't have a meeting here last week, so I expect that the collection is going to be somewhere around about double what it normally is. And in thinking about a subject, I thought what I'd... Pointed at that?
Do you want me to go next slide?
First slide.
There you go.
Next one.
Next one is the one I just showed you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, the topic is the 4 days in April. I picked 4 days in the period that you haven't been having Rotary meetings, and they're all sort of good news days because I've found that people are more inclined to put money in the plate if they're feeling good about things. And the first day is coming up, Sunday the 17th. And that's a rather large cruise ship leaving Wellington, the last of the season. It's been the best season that has ever been in Wellington for cruise ships. That ship happens to have about 3,800 passengers on board. And there's a bigger one than that in the same family coming along next year, another 1,000 perhaps people. But over the time that the cruise ships have been coming in this last season, there have been about 530,000 visitors to Wellington, day trippers. That's up 15% on last year, which is a real boost for the economy of Wellington, even if they just spend money going up and down in the cable car. It's all coming in. And to Papa. So those of you who would like to go on a cruise, or perhaps have been on a cruise, perhaps you could recognise the delights of cruising by putting a small donation on the plate. What am I meant to do? Point at that.
Oh, I know what we should turn it on.
Oh. Oh, we now have power.
Point to that one.
Point to that one.
Okay, I'll do it for you, mate.
Okay, next slide. Right. Thursday the 21st of April, a really special day in the UK. Her Majesty, the Queen Elizabeth, had a real birthday rather than the one that we celebrate in June. And from the look of those balloons, which she seems a little bit apprehensive about, it happened to be her 90th. The chap with her in the car, and she's happier there, I think, away from the balloon, he's going to be 95 in June. And isn't that a great age? And still busy working. Pressing, even on her birthday, she's around pressing the flesh in Windsor. And as part of a birthday present to herself, she gave herself a family portrait. And this happens to be a collection of her grandkids. There are 5 of the great-grandchildren there, all 5. And the 2 small ones, including on the Queen's knee, are the youngest grandchildren. And the great-grandchildren. Yeah. Now, the little girl on the left is the one I'm particularly interested in. I think she's great. And her name, in case you don't know, is Mia Tyndall, MIA. She's 2 years old, and she's got herself a job there. She's looking after the Queen's handbag. She's really holding on to that. And the reason she's really holding on to it is that her dad was somebody who was really good at holding on to the rugby ball and fighting off anybody who came near it. His name was Tyndall, of course, Mike Tyndall. And some of you might remember him. He came out here with the England team for the World Cup and had a little bit of a fracas with a few of his mates down in Invercargill, and then wasn't part of the team anymore. Queenstown. Well, a bit south anyway. Yeah. So those of you who remember the World Cup and how enjoyable that was, a donation please. Moving on to a little bit closer to today, Monday the 25th of April, last Monday. And there are a couple of photos. Can anybody tell me what the left-hand one represents? Church of Tainui, right. Reputed to be the first formal service of an Anzac Day, commemorating Anzac Day. There's a few other contestants for that, but seeing New Zealand sees the light first, I think probably Tainui wins. And what happened was the Reverend Basil Ashcroft took a 7:30 service and then marched them all off to the top of the hill and with a cross and stuck it up there, and there it is still in great form. So has anybody been to Tainui this year to celebrate? There are quite a few people there. No? Well, how about those that have been to an Anzac Day service this year? Hands up? Yes. Right, everybody that didn't can put some money in the plate. Thank you to those that did. The picture at the bottom, by the way, is at Petone, where the railway workers, on the same day, had a service and a parade, and they exchanged flags with their counterparts in New South Wales from a town called Hornsbury. So the Australian flag was raised as well as the New Zealand flag. Next. Okay, and then on the day after, I noticed in the paper that it was announced that that particular note, the new $5 note, had been recognised by the International Banknote Society. You probably didn't know there was an International Banknote Society, but they recognised it as the Banknote of the Year. And Jeff Backskand, who isn't here, but if he was here, would surely be sitting at that table, and you can pay on his behalf. Got lots of publicity in the paper, for being the Governor of the Reserve Bank who was looking after banknotes and particularly new banknotes. And when you look at it, it is really a work of great art. Rather than the old sort of watermarks, there's a very fancy strip down the side with, and I've got an example of it in my pocket. You won't be able to see it out there, but you can see almost a hologram in it. If you look at hold the note up to the light, the patterns on the back and the patterns on the front sort of combine and make a letter 5. And it recognises one of our heroes, Red Hillary, Iraqi Mount Cook. There, that was always on the note. And on the other side, the images are the same, but they've been brightened up a bit. And they are to do with what goes on in Campbell Island, including a rather rare penguin. Next one. And just finally, we've got somebody today who has become a 65-year-old, and I think there might be a few others in the room. And
Most of them are considerably older.
And earlier this year, the government announced that there'd been an increase in the New Zealand average net wage, which is what the government superannuation is linked to. And quite amazingly, to my mind, they said it had gone up 2.73%. Now, everybody else is saying that inflation is flat and might almost be negative, and perhaps at most about 0.4%. However, there's obviously a whole lot more money going into the pot, and from the 1st of April, the rate of national super went up by 2.73%. So the increase down there, those of you who still pretend that they're single are getting another $10 or so, and married couples are getting over $15. And we want part of that, please. So, a generous contribution on the plate, and those who haven't quite got there yet, thank you for helping to fund that.
Okay, now we've got a couple of 5-minute speakers. We're going to hear first from Wayne Morgan, who's needing to slip away, so he's going to give us a brief update on how wealthy the club is, and then Leanna Dey is going to come and do her introduction. But first of all, Wayne.
Thank you, Madam President, and my Chancellor retired, acknowledge, and members. So just a quick update. We're in pretty good shape. So it's probably... Gone. Okay. So I thought I'd just quickly sort of highlighted just a few areas. So first, money coming in, fundraising. There's been 2 events so far this year. So Singers was a new one this year, and overall nearly $13,000 came in from that, and that was a fantastic effort for an inaugural fundraising event for the club. And then Jumbo Tennis is a perennial and really great event. It's a signature event for this club. That's round about the net money that's raised from the franchising work that we've done so far and the event on the day. There's still a little bit of accounting to do, so before William gets too concerned, there's a bit coming in and out, but thereabouts is what we've raised. So overall, nearly 40,000 raised by the club in 2 events, and I know there are other events going on, including the dining book, amongst others. And that is all spent on donations, on grants and donations. And I'll come to administration a little bit later on.
Next one.
Yes, please, yeah. And then, in fact, just going through donations, we work very closely with the trust now, so that we spend relatively little money coming out of the club, because most of our money now flows through the trust. But just for the club, we've spent $18,500 so far this year. Autism was the main one. That was a promise from last year, I think, from Jumbo Tennis, if I'm correct. Yes, and the Island Bay was taken care of last year. And we've got the music prizes there. And I'm sorry it's a bit small, but the trust donations, are the ones that there's a couple that the trust does on their own, but the sergeant session, it's appropriate I follow the sergeant session. Most of that money is going across to the trust, so you can get receipts for those donations. And the club, as Peter explained relatively recently, works very closely with the club to pull together the donations. So we've got Akina with the Social Enterprise Awards, 10,000. Bernie Knowles, which is a series of grants for the elderly, is at the large 13,900. We had surgical research at the bottom there, 10,000. And then Mary Potter Hospice, and then some other donations. So that's where we've got to year to date. There will be more in the period from April through to June this year, because the budget is somewhat higher than that. And then the last area I just thought I'd talk about is club administration. And the green boxes are there to say that we're actually travelling pretty well. So the membership fees that we pay for levy and subscriptions are designed to cover the levies that we pay for Rotary, also our administration costs. And this club would not operate without the club administrator, that's really the main cost, and the website that we have. So we're slightly in surplus with the meals. We do have guests, so the money that we spend on lunches covers those. Levies, we're close to breakdown, slightly behind, and that's probably that the membership is just slightly below where we were, but we're working on that. And then in terms of club administration costs, we are slightly in surplus, so we're operating pretty much break even there. And just to say that we're going to be, I've checked, we haven't invoiced the sponsorship for the website this year, so we will be actually doing that in the next month. And just to say also that I'm just working on an idea in terms of pulling together sponsorships and trying to get sort of large organisations that we get quite close to. So you might like to think about who might be we could tap on the shoulder to sort of say, could you help us with our administration costs? So that's my 5 minutes. So that's just a quick update. I'm happy to take, if you've got any questions in terms of the finance for the club at any time, just give me an email or give me a call. I'm happy to answer any individual calls. Thank you.
Wayne's done an amazing job as looking after the finances of the Wellington Club, so I think we should give him another clap because he does a huge amount of work. It's a bit of an unsung hero, so thank you, Wayne. Now, Leanna, would you like to come up and do your introduction to the club? Thank you.
Thank you, President Carey, and hi everyone. I'm Leanna Dey, and what drives my career is this. Happiness is good for your heart. So what? Well, there's two wicked world problems. Heart disease is the world's #1 killer, and the World Health Organization predicts depression to be the second leading cause of disability by 2020. Why is this? You may or may not know that hearts and happiness are scientifically linked. There's a robust, growing body of research which shows that well-being predicts heart health. So what led to discovering this and forming a mission-driven business? Well, I grabbed my commerce degree at Victoria and jumped on a plane to a far-flung city in China where no one spoke a word of English, and they didn't speak Mandarin, they spoke Cantonese, which I'd learnt Mandarin, which was a bit of a frightful thing. But I taught English there, came home and managed 2 flight centre stores, later moving into their business development arm. 3 years and 2 children later, I purchased the Wellington master franchise of Greenacres with my partner, and we look after and work with 62 franchisees. 2 years ago, I didn't know much at all about heart disease. I thought that it mainly killed older folk or people with obesity, I certainly didn't know that it was the global killer. I joined the Heart Foundation Committee as a Wellington volunteer because I didn't actually point out at that point it killed my father, aged 59, suddenly and unexpectedly. So joining the committee, knowing a lot more about heart disease, I happened to hear an interview on Radio New Zealand on Dr. Happy, Dr. Timothy Sharp, on the science of happiness, where he talked about how happiness is something that it's not only subjective, we can positively influence. This electrified me, and I started to research, and as I was researching, I came across and started collecting all these studies around heart health and mental health. And I thought, well, given there's evidence-based ways that we can positively influence our psychological health and thus protect our physical health, what are some tools that we can give heart attack survivors and their families to A, help prevent a second attack, and B, help them live their best possible lives with heart disease? And moreover, as a charity, what is a sustainable way that we can fund this? So these questions were floating around in my head, and at the same time I came across some things which really spoke to me. The Sovereign Wellbeing Index study, New Zealand's first measurement of happiness, indicates that only about 25% of Kiwis are living their best possible life. Work satisfaction is highly correlated to wellbeing, yet in New Zealand we sit 30 out of 31 countries, and across the globe only about half the people are happy at work. There's a scientific link between a harsh boss who's unsupportive and heart disease in employees. On the other hand, a positive work culture where people are valued and supported predicts heart health in employees. So I contacted the investigator of this study, Dr. Aaron Jardine, and I said, hey, I want to enable an environment of wellbeing within my franchisee group. How do I measure how happy they are? So he pointed me towards his assessment tool, a 10-minute survey where the employee or franchisee gets a personal report and I get an organisational report, which is tracked and measured over time. This was awesome, but I still had more questions. Given that positive wellbeing leads to successful life and business outcomes, what are some tools we could give our franchisees to help cultivate a positive outlook on life, identify their strengths, help them practice kindness towards themselves and each other? Things that are proven by science to help us get the best out of life and buffer us against things like stress and ultimately heart disease. In reality, there was no scalable digital solution. So long story short, Dr. Jardine and I have co-founded Heart of Wellbeing, where we make digital wellbeing tools. Our mission is to get more Kiwis having better days at work, and by stealth, combat heart disease. And our business model, our social enterprise business model, means that we will be able to fund the Heart Foundation to provide wellbeing resource for people impacted by heart disease. And we're still in discussions about how that will look with them. I believe social enterprise is the way of the future. On one end of the spectrum, we've got charity. Is this sustainable? Does it create dependency? On the other end of the spectrum, typical business. How is this bettering our communities? How is this measured? In the middle, we've got different varieties of social enterprise, but they all have one thing in common. They were founded to create social impact. Mission-driven business. What if one day every business measured the social or environmental impact of their business activities? It's really hard, and sometimes I feel like I'm out of my depth or like an idiot, which no one likes.